So it's that time again where we have to talk about our favorite Nintendo fanboy, Harmon Smith. Of course, there wasn't really anything else that I found interesting or noteworthy to talk about, but he did make a second Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree video. And from what I've heard, it's more, let's just say, interesting than the first one. And I really just feel like suffering for a bit more, just to watch another one of his miserable videos and random takes that he makes on a DLC that he's never going to play, probably. So let's just get into the video, and let's see how long it takes us before we're all suffering mentally from his miserable takes.
I'm sorry.
Well, I thank you for apologizing, Harmon. I know this video is going to be miserable, but at least you're apologizing beforehand before we all get into it. I appreciate you at least doing the bare minimum to at least try to save us.
I'm sorry. I've been so busy with personal stuff lately that I haven't been able to sit down and talk about the elephant in the room.
Well, I think we just found the elephant in the room.
Right? Something that nobody else is really wanting to acknowledge yet. And the situation is escalating, and it really needs to be addressed.
So you're telling me that you're gonna word this so-called situation around Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree like it's gonna be life-threatening, that it's gonna be this really bad thing that no one wants to hear. You make it sound way worse than it needs to be. Like, I didn't know the success of a DLC would hurt you so bad, but then again, I shouldn't be surprised, as almost anything that isn't on Nintendo will hurt your feelings.
I don't know if I'm like the first person to come out and say it. I don't know if this is like considered a hot take or if people are in the process of acknowledging it, but it's very obvious to me that Elden Ring Shadows of the Erdtree is not a popular DLC.
Yep, that's right, guys. 400 to 500k at the 24 peak hour is absolutely terrible. I don't know what to tell you guys. I think Harmon's right. Games like Baldur's Gate getting nearly, 900k? I don't remember off the top of my head. It's terrible. All these other games hitting 500k or even more, like fucking CSGO hitting 1.2 million, absolutely terrible. Especially a couple of weeks off the launch for Elden Ring's DLC. I think it's only a week and a half. I could be wrong. Yep, but that regardless of the release and anything else, it's just terrible. How dare they get this number? Even if Nintendo got this number, it must be terrible under his logic.
People aren't playing it, they're not talking about it, they're not enjoying it. Now, right now, we're in this weird position where FromSlop is doing their typical thing of having their shills, people like Asmongold and Moist Critical come out and try to say that, like, the game is perfect. People are only complaining about it because it's too hard.
You know, a majority of all the reviews on Steam are from Chinese players that can't actually play the game because of the anti-cheat, which this is also a problem that almost pretty much everyone has experienced if they attempt multiplayer. I remember when I was trying to play with a friend and it kicked me for inappropriate behavior. I didn't know logging into a game would be classed as inappropriate, but good to know, FromSoft. And pretty much most of the people that actually complained about difficulty didn't really leave that as one of their main points in the fucking review that they made. It was mainly just the problems around the game, like some of the performance, and maybe some questionable hitboxes from the bosses. But for the most part, the way that I worded my people getting good at the fucking game and just actually try to play the game and change up their build and learn how to play, it pretty much fixed all the issues that most people had. But then again, that was something that should be expected from people if you're trying to play a game. Try everything out. There's a lot of new stuff in the DLC, just enjoy it.
If someone could get through all of Elden Ring, do you really think they would be upset about the difficulty? Right? This is the problem with FromSlop, and the reason I cannot stand them and their fanboys is that, like, every time someone talks about their games, how finicky they are, like how slow paced they are, like the combat, the glitches, like the frame rate, the bosses, like...
I think some of these criticisms that you have here only apply to certain Souls games, not to all of them. If you believe that's all of them, well, you definitely haven't played Dark Souls 3 or Elden Ring. They're not really finicky, they're all pretty fluent compared to the originals. But then again, saying random stuff doesn't usually help your argument, but then again, it helps us by getting us more views, and people love watching you say stupid things, so I don't really have much to say. Except you're fat. Very fat.
The cheap one shots, like they all just like do this thing where they're just like, is it too hard for you? Like,
ew, what was that? Ew, 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 ew. Don't ever do that again. Yuck, stinky. Stay away. Don't ever do that. Don't. Please don't. I'll do anything.
Never mind the fact that I've played and beaten far more difficult games than Dark Souls, right? That I am an extremely experienced player who knows what he's talking about when it comes to like difficulty in games and what is good and challenging gameplay.
If you want to talk about a complex and difficult game to understand, Harmon, that would be Dwarf Fortress. That game is made for people that are computer scientists. I've been having a lot of fun with Dwarf Fortress. I haven't played too much of it, but I'm really enjoying it. It's actually pretty cool. I love getting fucked over for making one mistake and then watching my entire colony of retard dwarves die. If you're on PC, I recommend Dwarf Fortress. It's a peak game.
Like Elden Ring, no FromSlop game is difficult. Like they're just cheap, right? They don't explain to you critical mechanics. They're obtuse, right? They're not well designed, interesting games, right? There are so many more better action-packed games in this genre that do the same thing but better, right? Monster Hunter chief among them.
I wouldn't really compare Monster Hunter and Dark Souls together. I don't think that would be necessarily a fair comparison since they're trying to achieve two different things within their genre. One's trying to be a challenging but fun game, and the other one's where you wipe out a local ecosystem for a cool armor set you like. I speak from experience.
Like FromSlop has not been doing anything new or interesting in their entire history, essentially.
Why would they need to do anything new? They literally created their own genre of games, the Souls games. No one has ever come close, and people only try to imitate those games. Very few companies are able to make comparable games to From Software's Souls games.
Right? They have always been outclassed by other developers. You know, Armored Core was outclassed by all the other mech games out there, and of course Tenchu was destroyed by Metal Gear Solid to the point where people don't even realize that like Tenchu predated it as a stealth game. Like FromSlop is just not a very good development studio, right? And I do think this DLC, it really is a very good indication of that, because if people were really enjoying this DLC, if they were really talking about it, right, you would be seeing all this like real positive just.
Have you not looked at YouTube recently? Literally everyone's talking about the DLC. People are excited to play the DLC. Everyone's making lore videos, coming to conclusions, doing what you would expect when a new thing from Software comes out. And you can even look at the creators' content. It seems for the most part that people's viewership that actually make videos about Elden Ring and associated content with Elden Ring in it see an increased viewership. For example, I have
like coverage of the game, but no. Like the first instinct of the FromSlop fanboy is to come out and do damage control.
I really wonder what you do when your Nintendo game that came out whatever year doesn't do as well as some other games, so you have the damage control for them. So I don't know, we can look at both FromSlop fanboys and you as an example of a Nintendo fanboy, so I think this can go both ways.
Disappointing, right? They really reused a bunch of assets. They really did not elaborate on any of the lore bits that people actually wanted elaborated on, and just focused on a handful of popular characters, right? Like they didn't do anything new or interesting with this DLC, right? This game went from like a game of the year contender to just being this thing that people are just like desperately trying to do damage control for, right? That is the current situation of Shadow of the Erdtree, is that people are desperately trying to pretend as if like, oh man, this is the most difficult game ever. Oh, this streamer spent 50 hours trying to beat the final boss.
So I just skipped a little bit ahead in his video because he was talking about spoilers, and since I'm sure some of you are still going through the game, I'm sure you don't want anything spoiled. Apparently it's a bad thing to reuse assets, you know, the same thing that Nintendo's done for 2 games now, you know, Zelda and then Tears of the Kingdom using pretty much the exact same map. But like I said last video, it's only bad when companies that are not Nintendo are doing this, but when Nintendo does it, it's okay. Also, who was saying that Elden Ring is hard? At least for me personally, I would call that the easiest Souls game yet. At least in my opinion. I do think some of the DLC bosses gave me some slight trouble, but once you memorize those movesets, it's pretty much an easy game. So maybe that's just my L take and I'm not experiencing what everyone else is experiencing, or I don't know, maybe I'm just really cracked.
Like, okay, but I'm still not going to buy it. You know, I'm still not going to play it. Like, why would I? Nothing I've seen from this game indicates that it's fun. And I do think this is the big major takeaway to get from this, is that like, I don't think people have fun playing these games. The entire appeal, the entire like obsession is based around like the status symbol of being able to beat a FromSlop game, and then like the lore community.
Harmon, have you ever just realized that people enjoy playing Souls games for the fun of it, enjoy the bit of the challenge, and enjoy the way that they may play it that may give them a sense of a status symbol? For example, those guys that do a no-hit run with only their fists, and every time they get hit, they have to restart either the game or the entire trilogy. I believe those people deserve credit because they're doing something that not most other people will ever try to do because they may perceive it as something incredibly hard, but can you guess what they get from doing that? Fun. It's fun to learn from your mistakes. And even I'm someone that enjoys doing my own Dark Souls challenges where I go around using only a certain weapon, maybe going in with only one upgraded weapon or having no upgrades. It's all about the fun that you can make for yourself in these games. They're infinitely replayable for the most part.
Like in a very distant second, where people speculate like all their weird fringe fan fiction theories about like how Michaela is trans and that like he's sending people out to breed with like it's just like I don't know. Okay, like I don't I don't follow the lore. I don't know how like ridiculous it's gotten. Like I know like Dark Souls is carried entirely by the YouTube lore community. Anyone who tells you that Dark Souls has a good story is full of crap. You know, Vadi Vidya putting on a voice and making some weird theory video about like why that guy was stuck in the tower basement.
You know, it's kind of funny how a lot of the speculation in the lore community can usually end up being right. We thought Mikola was Saint Trina and it turns out that they were. I mean, that's kind of a spoiler, but it's not really something unless you're gonna find that unless you actively search for it, and it turns out that it's relatively correct, because most Souls creators use the information of the world around them and some of the stuff in the world to come to that conclusion. To me, that's a good way to set up a story. Don't give it straight out to the individual player straight away. Make them earn it, make them come to a conclusion that they can understand. And I believe in some regards, this storytelling is what I would prefer as pretty good storytelling to build up your world. And if you're someone that doesn't take an interest in the lore, you can completely go past it and just play the game and enjoy it as you did. And if you do take an interest, you can go look at videos, you can go do your own research, you can go find out things that you take an interest in within those games. There are still people to this day still doing Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls Trilogy lore videos. And for the end of time, we'll probably never know what happens to any of these characters at the end of Dark Souls 3, what happened in the previous games, how did these things come to this and that conclusion? We'll never know. Maybe in a Dark Souls 4, whenever that happens.
It's just like, who cares? Like, these characters aren't interesting, the world isn't interesting, it's not fleshed out, it's not interesting, it's not well told, right? It's not even that dark when you really think about it, considering that, like, it's all destined to happen. It's just this endless cycle, bro. Like, come on. Like, I don't enjoy Dark Souls. I don't enjoy anything about it. I don't enjoy the community. I don't respect them. I think
that's because you don't respect anything that isn't Nintendo, or anything that is owned or developed, published, produced, anything that is by Nintendo. As long as it's by them, that's the only time you'll ever like anything. Any games that are exclusive to that platform are the best games. Anything that isn't, mid-trash that should never be touched.
I think is the big thing to take away from this. Because, like, when you really look at, like, how Nintendo fans act, you know, us superior gamers, yeah, we're willing to, like, criticize video games, right? We're willing to address that, like, oh, yeah, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door wasn't great. Like,
you would never talk bad about Nintendo. I refuse to believe that. You, out of anyone, would never say anything bad about them. I do not believe you. That's a lie. There is no way in any world or any universe, any reality, or any comprehension of any existence you would talk bad about them. You know what? I think we're done here. I think we've said everything we need to for this video. You got yourself some more harm and soul. I would like to cover some PlayStation fanboys or maybe even Xbox fanboys, but no one seems to be making anything interesting that I would consider noteworthy. So, if you want to help me out, help me reach 2,000 subscribers. So, I'll see you in the next video. Hope you all have a great day and take care.